A man involved in a $13 million international fraud case with victims in South Dakota and other states was sentenced to federal prison today. The other didn't show up in federal court.
Kelland Investigates has been following this scheme, which involved fake humanitarian projects, a European mansion, millions in silver coins, and now two people on the run from the law.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another True Crime Mysteries video. Thank you all for being here. Today we're discussing 3 cases of unbelievable fraud. Let's get into it. Number 1. Garrison Courtney. You've probably heard the term, fake it till you make it. Well, this first fraudster we're going to discuss really took that phrase and ran with it for his entire career. His lies eventually put him in a position to swindle companies out of millions of dollars. From 2012 to 2019, Garrison Courtney convinced at least 12 private companies that he was a CIA agent assigned to a deep cover task force working on American soil. Names of the companies have been kept out of the press and court documents. Courtney told these companies that he was a CIA agent working on highly classified programs that was authorized at the highest level of government. He said the task force was named Alpha 214 and he needed help with commercial cover to protect himself and the country. He preyed on the CEO's patriotism and desire to be helpful to their country in order to earn their trust. What this would entail was putting him on their payroll. These payments amounted to about $4.4 million to mask his association with the CIA. He told the companies that they would be reimbursed by the government and given lucrative contracts with the Department of Defense in their cooperation, and that they would also be serving their country. Now, as unbelievable as it sounds, Courtney was very convincing. He had forged government documents, he was a convincing storyteller, and in DC, it kind of made sense that the government would need assistance from public companies to hide undercover spy initiatives. Even though it seems straight out of a novel, Courtney also did extensive research on who to target, focusing on company CEOs whose public beliefs made them more susceptible to manipulation. He also had an elaborate backstory that he was a Gulf War vet that had hundreds of confirmed kills in combat. He said he was wounded in an explosion during his service in the Gulf War. He also said that he had sustained injuries to his lungs from smoke caused by fires in the Iraq oil fields. He even went so far as to tell people that he was so crucial to national security that foreign intelligence agencies had tried to assassinate him in a ricin attack on American soil, and that his deep cover was so important that the CIA made all the evidence of the attack disappear. He had all of his victims and witnesses sign NDAs. To this day, some of these victims will still not talk to authorities for fear of affecting national security. Courtney also told these CEOs that they needed to change their routines and that they should use their credit cards as little as possible because of their involvement with the task force, that they would be targets. Foreign agencies may be watching them. He had also convinced these people that he was ferreting out spies in the government or people who might be leaking top-secret information to foreign spies. Courtney had been born in the Philippines, the son of an officer in the U.S. Air Force. When his father settled their family back stateside, he grew up in Montana. Courtney himself had a brief career in the military, but soon discovered it wasn't for him. He instead decided to attend the University of Montana, where he studied broadcast journalism. In university, he had already established a reputation as being very generous with the truth. His ability to charm and talk himself up landed him a job as a newscaster and eventually a full-time gig as a meteorologist, despite having no experience. Working in the news gave him exclusive access to things he never would have been able to get without a press badge, introducing and making a name for himself in government circles. In 2005, Courtney left journalism and broadcast and headed to Washington, D.C., where he was hired as a spokesperson for the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency. However, even this wasn't enough, and he left that job to go into the private sector, working in defense and intelligence contracting, a job he was eventually fired from for overpromising to clients. It was all this experience that gave him enough intergovernmental knowledge to create this fraudulent scheme, and it wasn't just people in his professional life he was scamming. His wife had also been led to believe that Courtney was a high-level CIA agent and had no idea what her husband had been up to. To make this worse, he had convinced public officials to help him in his scam. The more companies and public officials he recruited to help him, the more legit his scam became. In January 2016, Courtney found out for the first time that he was being investigated by the FBI. A subpoena was sent to one of the companies he was on the payroll. He used the public officials to talk to the company's counsel to tell them that the FBI had no jurisdiction in looking into its covert dealings. He also used these public officials to speak directly to the FBI, saying that they had no right to interfere with other agencies' secret task forces, and threatened that they, the FBI, would be prosecuted if they continued the investigation. Also in 2016, Courtney started to feel more roadblocks. He took a meeting at the Pentagon with the highest-ranking member of the U.S. Air Force. Unknown to Courtney, this lieutenant general was working with law enforcement to record this meeting. In this meeting, Courtney is quoted telling a story of a bogus meeting to this general to prove the legitimacy of his task force, quote, "In 2013 it was, I can't remember if it was the 15th or 18th of December when all the Snowden fallout happened. Basically the industry just got nailed, they were losing about $3 trillion, so they had the White House meeting. I think, if I remember correctly, Dr. Vickers was there, the head of the DIA was there, the head of the agency, and there were quite a few people there, and it was about 200 industry heads, and they were just getting nailed across the board. There was a group of about 15 people that were told, you're in the private sector now, we need you to coordinate with the private sector to get stuff lined." When the investigation the FBI was conducting began to start closing in on Courtney, he moved his family to Florida. His wife had been interviewed by the FBI and was already suspicious that all these things her husband had been telling her were lies. While in Florida, he started going by a fake name and went back to working in the private sector for defense. If officials had not stopped Courtney's scam, he would have cost the federal government billions in overpaying for procurement contracts. He also would have cost his victims more than just the $4.4 million he'd already taken. Courtney was arrested for wire fraud in 2020 and took a plea agreement, and is currently serving a 7-year sentence. In his sentencing hearing, he apologized for those he hurt and said, "I manipulated my friends and acquaintances with the lies, becoming more complex over time in order to bolster the program's importance." Number 2, Jay Mazzini.
And I'm gonna start selecting. I'm gonna select a few $500 ones right now to show you guys it's real. After you tweet the Dogecoin to $1, my pin tweet, send me a DM on Instagram, and I'll be looking at it. I'm only selecting 30 people, $500 each, which is $15,000. Regardless, even if you don't win, this is good for everybody that has invested in Dogecoin.
You may know the name Jay Mazzini. He was an Instagram influencer who went around handing out large cash gifts to strangers in grocery stores and parking lots, and was even seen in a video handing out large sums of money to workers at a Burger King with the artist 50 Cent. His real name is Jabara Igbara, and between 2019 and 2021, he had 2 major fraud schemes working simultaneously. One started when he started his company Halal Capital LLC, founded in October 2019. He targeted the New York Muslim community, where he would offer to invest their money with promises of very high returns in stocks, electronics, and COVID-19 PPE. He had more than a dozen investors who gave him more than $8 million. He never fulfilled any of his promises and used those funds to pay other investors in this multi-level Ponzi scheme. Most of this money ended up in his pocket, paying for luxury cars, jewelry, and gambling debts. Then in 2021, Jay Mazzini used his social media presence and told his followers that he would pay above market price for Bitcoin, willing to pay 3.5% to 5% over market price. For those who don't know, Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency not ruled by any bank or country. He started to get responses to his videos. On January 7th, 2021, Mazzini offered to pay just under $200,000 for 5 Bitcoin. This person, whose name is being kept secret, agreed to send it if Mazzini showed proof of the wire transfer on WhatsApp. Mazzini sent the picture of the wire transfer and his passport. Then the victim sent the Bitcoin. But the wire transfer was fake, and Mazzini had never sent this person any money. The next person to send Mazzini Bitcoin was in February 2021. This time, he showed this person that his supposed net worth was $33 million and that he'd bought a bunch of Bitcoin in the last week, totaling $3 to $4 million. All of this was fake. When they agreed to send Mazzini the Bitcoin, he showed them a fake wire transfer for just over $3 million. They then sent $750,000 worth of Bitcoin. And when they pressured Mazzini that they didn't receive the wire transfer, he sent back approximately $3.5 thousand back. They didn't get anything else from Mazzini. Court records show that at the time that Mazzini said he could send over $3 million to the second individual, he only had $162 in his bank account. Then a third individual had talked to Mazzini about sending 50 Bitcoin for just under $3 million. In this case, the individual was sent a video showing several wire transfers to pay for the Bitcoin. Then the individual sent over the Bitcoin. They said that they saw the payments of at most $500,000 and nowhere near the value or the price they agreed on. Mazzini would use the money from the Halal Capital LLC to pay small amounts of the people who he owed in Bitcoin, and then the people from the Bitcoin to hold off the investors from the Halal Capital LLC. Most of this money, though, stayed in his pocket. Mazzini has been charged twice, and in November 2022 he pleaded guilty to wire fraud conspiracy, and money laundering. He faces up to 20 years in prison. A press release had this quote from the IRS special agent in charge, Fatorso, quote, "All the victims in this case were promised something that was too good to be true. Those in the Ponzi scheme were all assured a high rate of return in a short amount of time, while the victims of the Bitcoin advanced fee scheme were guaranteed above current market value for their Bitcoin. This multi-million-dollar case is a reminder for anyone thinking of investing. Be skeptical of any investments with larger-than-life promises, because if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is." Number 3. Nathan J. Peachy. 4 men worked together to defraud the hard-earned life savings and retirement funds from multiple people across the United States. Nathan Peachy of Pennsylvania, considered the mastermind, would pretend to be a pastor looking to get donations and investments towards ministries named the Joseph Project, Jericho Outreach Norway, and Christian Charity Foundation. He said that they would get 20 to 30% return, and some of the profits would go to charities of their choice. He used people's Christian beliefs to trick them out of their life savings. None of this money would be used for this purpose. All of it would be sent to his co-conspirators, sent via wire transfers to banks in Norway. The money was used to buy houses in Norway, luxury cars, and over $4 million in silver coins. Peachy was not the only one involved in the fraud. John Wick Weiner worked out of New Mexico doing the same thing and would send the money to Peachy to be funneled to Norway. A grand jury indicted Peachy and Weiner on November 5, 2019, along with 2 other men that were also indicted at the same time. Currently, the other 2 men have not gone to court. One of the men is Lauren William Roser, who may have been the person that oversaw the scheme and lives in Norway. There's not much information on him and not really any concrete information on whether authorities will extradite him, but he is currently in Norway. The 4th man, Frederick Arias, is currently on the FBI's most wanted list in connection to his involvement in this fraud. On his wanted poster it says, quote, "Between December 2015 and October 2017, Arias allegedly told investigators that the Joseph Project was a safe and secure investment with guaranteed profits. Instead, Arias allegedly withdrew funds to pay personal expenses and wired funds overseas. He is believed to have fled the country." Tyler Hatchner is the special agent in charge for the IRS criminal investigation and is quoted as saying, The uniqueness of this case is the manner in which they were going to spend the profits of the scheme, meaning that if you put in money, you were going to get 20 to 25% return, and some of those returns would be used for humanitarian or celestial projects. That many of the victims could have a say in what those look like, that they could build homes or orphanages in third world countries. Peachy, who's now 51 years old, and Weiner, 68 years old, were charged with fraud, money laundering, and obstruction of justice conspiracies. They went to trial in November 2021, and the jury returned with guilty verdicts on all counts for both Peachy and Weiner. Their sentencing hearing was set for February 14, 2022, but Weiner failed to appear. Peachy was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison as well as $11 million in restitution, and the forfeit of his home in Norway, a luxury car, and the silver coins that were recovered from the house in Norway. On April 18, 2022, Weiner was finally sentenced to 22 years in federal prison and faced the exact same financial repercussions as Peachy. Well, that is it for this video. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you like this content and what I do over here, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss my next upload. If you give this video a like if you enjoyed the content, that would be much appreciated as it helps the channel to grow. We also have channel membership or Patreon if you want to get more behind the scenes content or exclusive content or just to support the channel. In the description box of this video, you'll also find links to all my socials to connect with me as well as other goodies. But that is it for me. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.